So just to give you an overview, I'll be talking a little about the trends and setting some of the dimensions there to what we mean by inequalities or inequities. I want to say a few words about framing the issue and how important that is, and what governmental agencies are currently up to, and then have a little bit more of a think about how we could develop interventions and what impact they may have on social inequalities. And then lastly, Vivica had given me a few questions to respond to, so I'll add those in at the end. Okay, that was the overview slide. I hope you're getting this one now, which is just the trends in child obesity. You have the USA there along the top. You'll be familiar with those, child overweight, I should say. But to show that there are plenty of countries now that are rapidly reaching similar levels to the USA. Mexico, obviously, we've been talking about, but Brazil coming up fast too. Iran, South Africa. The rapid expansion of the obesity epidemic around the world is really quite dramatic, and I think that's one of the first points to make, and you've already been hearing about it from Barry and others. The social gradient, it differs in different countries, it differs according to economic development. If we take the UK, there's some beautiful data which you can talk to Harry about afterwards, because he was responsible for collecting or setting up the system that collected a lot of this data. Very beautiful data on children aged, the younger set there, 5 or 6, and the older group there, 10 and 11, showing social disparities. On the left, you have the least deprived families, low levels of obesity. On the right, the most deprived families, higher levels of obesity. And the point to note here, of course, is that this is a gradient across the whole dimension. It isn't just a pocket of problems at the most deprived levels. It's a very uniform gradient, extraordinarily so. And I have to say, this data is really beautiful. It's measured data. It's not self-reported. And it's virtually all children in England. It's not a sample. It's all children in England. I think Harry can confirm it's up at the sort of 95, 96% collection levels. And that's extraordinary data, and it shows this very smooth gradient, and I want to come back to that a little later on. We can show it in a few other countries, similar data, not the smoothness of it, but at least comparing high and low education families or parents. You get the gradient. You get low-educated families tend to have children more likely to be overweight. The exception there you can see is Greece, where the level itself is extremely high. There are a couple of points to make from this, that the slope of the gradient does vary between different countries. These are all member states of the European Union, but they're remarkably different. You see Slovenia shows an extraordinary difference between high and low educated parents in the child obesity rates, whereas Greece is flat and Norway is pretty flat and so on. So the slope obviously is quite different in different countries. And of course the prevalence levels, the absolute level, just the average across the education, there differs remarkably. So Greece has very high levels, Slovenia pretty high, and Spain, and then Netherlands and Norway quite low. So there are a number of different issues there about differences between countries, differences between socioeconomic groups. The differences between country one, we've taken another look at that and asked ourselves whether countries with high levels of inequity, that's for children I'm thinking here, that's households that are either very rich or very poor. And if you have a high differential, so a country with a great difference between the richest and poorest households, does that have any impact? And the answer is it does. We looked at, just a minute, trying to get this one up. Yeah. Okay, European member states household inequality index. There is a correlation between the degree of inequality that a country has and the child obesity levels. So countries that have a high degree of inequality, which are Portugal, Spain, Greece, and Italy on this graph, are likely to have higher levels of child obesity than the countries with very egalitarian households, Denmark, Norway. So that's interesting, and I wondered if that was the case for the United States. So I took a look at child obesity levels, and the only index of inequalities I could get for U.S. states are these ones for Gini index, which is just a general income inequality. So states with the greatest income inequalities, very rich and very poor in a state, compared with states with fairly flat income inequality, low-income inequality, you get a correlation with child obesity. Not very strong, but then the index isn't particularly trying to measure households with children in them. So, and it's there, it's significant. So the level of inequality or inequity in a society, economic inequity, household deprivation, the degree of inequity, the degree of rich versus poor, how rich are the richest, how poor are the poorest, seems to affect health, and certainly child obesity. So that's one dimension I want to bring out that isn't often mentioned, is this overall sort of level of inequity in society. I also want to think about how it isn't just children, it stretches around the whole life course. So we get examples of social inequities. We get examples here of obesity levels being higher in lower educated groups in pregnancy, and obesity levels being higher in lower educated groups in even pre-pregnancy. So women attending before getting pregnant. So there are whole life course issues that need to be addressed that feed into the child obesity problem that we need to think about. And social inequities are occurring throughout those.